Hey everyone, welcome to It Tastes Different Gaming podcast. Before we get into this episode, I want you all to like this video and make sure you subscribe down below and ring the bell notification so you get updates on when we release new episodes, which is twice a week. You know, we release new episodes on Tuesdays and Fridays and Sundays. So be on the lookout for those and make sure you get updates for that. So if you hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell along with it so you know when we're going to get a new episode. What's for dessert? We have the Dippin' Dots ice cream, the ice cream of the future, with physical versus digital games. All right, so we are talking about digital games versus physical games. What's our go-to preference? You know, what do we like? Do we like digital games? Do we prefer to have the physical copies of those games? You know, and maybe how that's changed. You know, maybe back in the day we didn't care much for digital games and went more physical, and now we maybe swapped to more digital than we do physical. So, you know, we're just going to go around and see what everybody thinks about digital versus physical games. Let's go ahead and Russ, how about you, buddy? How about we start with you, and what do you think about digital versus physical, and what's your preference?
So I think I have not bought a physical copy of a game in probably 6 years. I think it's been right about 6 years. I have not bought a physical copy of a game except for Last of Us. I think Last of Us was the last one. I think that was even 5 years ago. And that was the last physical copy I have bought. So originally, Steam and people like that, the Steam and Epic and Origin, once those stores started to kick in, at first I thought to myself, especially if you think back as far as like the iTunes store and the Amazon stores and stuff like that. Like I was like, well, but is it going to stay forever? Am I going to lose it? So I would still purchase one or two little physical copies because I thought, oh, I'm going to need this. And then after move after move after move, I was like, I don't want these DVDs anymore. I don't want these games anymore. So I sold them all back and went strictly digital. Obviously, Xbox is not going anywhere. Microsoft is not going anywhere. Sony is not going to go anywhere. Even Nintendo, for that fact, is not going to go anywhere. So I am all about the digital now. My Steam library is finally starting to pick up a little bit of steam. No pun intended. So I'm definitely all about the digital now. Less clutter, less stuff around the house. I think I own maybe 3 digital or 3 physical copies of DVDs that are basically movies: Godfather, Star Wars, and I think Star Trek, and that's it. I don't plan on owning anything else. But beyond that, every game I buy now is digital, and I don't look at going back at all. So I am in the future, not in the past. Patrick, what do you think, man? What about you?
So I'm pretty much really in the same boat as Russ is. I used to buy exclusively physical copies of everything just because I thought the same way as Russ. I'm like, what if this company's not around anymore? How do I get my game or my music? But, with the iterations of Google and Apple for music, as an example, and video, movies still, because they've been around forever. I remember seeing the iPod and going, what happens if Apple goes under? And well, Apple didn't go under; they're still there, So, so yeah. And I got rid of my DVD collection pretty recently. Russ did it for me. He took everything up to the local entertainment mart and sold it for me. And I'm like, I had a full bookshelf full of crap, and I'm like, I'm tired of moving this stuff over and over and over. I don't own, but maybe a few physical copies of anything. Now, I will say that I buy almost. I have been buying, I should say, my PlayStation games as physical and my Switch games as physical, just because I don't have a tendency of going back to those games. But even then, I've kind of flip-flopped because I bought Ghost of Tsushima as digital, because I didn't see I would ever trade that thing in. But nowadays, though, trade-ins aren't even worth it. So I really kind of flip-flopping on that. So I'm almost all digital. 90% of what I buy is digital. It's a toss-up on PlayStation whether it's physical or digital, but Switch is almost always physical for me. I bought one digital game on the Switch, and that was Monster Hunter Rise. Everything else has been physical for that console for me. Nick, what are your takes on it? What do you primarily lean towards?
I'm more of a collector, and so I do lean towards the physical for the older stuff. For PlayStation 4, I'm the same as you, and for Switch, I'm the same. Where all those games I have for those are physical. I have a few PlayStation games that I do have that are digital only, and I have a few Nintendo games, but a large majority of them are all physical. For my Xbox, it's all digital, mainly because of the game share. I share with Shane, who's another podcaster on here that people may know. But, we have our game share between each other's consoles, and so we buy digital between each other's consoles for that fact. That way if I get a copy of it, he does too, and vice versa. So I'd rather go that route. Yeah, for my PlayStation, for my Switch, we don't have that. There's not the opportunity. Switch or PlayStation does kind of have that, but it doesn't. I don't know. Me and Shane have had some trouble with it. But regardless, I all my PS4 games and all my Switch games are all physical. But coming into the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, which we don't have yet, those are going to be digital for me. Xbox I've already started digital, and I'm going to continue that with the Series X, which I've already have, and then PlayStation 5 is going to be all digital. And there's a few reasons for that. Originally I said I'm a collector. I have a bunch of PS2 and PS3 and PlayStation and GameCube and just name it. I probably have a physical copy of it. But nowadays, those physical copies aren't worth like they used to be, because a lot of the physical copies nowadays are just digital copies, right? And what I mean by that is you get the disc, and it's only a portion of the game on the disc. You download that portion off the disc, and it downloads the rest of the game off the internet. So really, those physical copies anymore for most games for Xbox and PlayStation are really just digital copies in disguise, right? It's just really the key that unlocks it from the digital store, and then you download the rest of it. So there's really no point in owning it anymore because you can kind of get away from that fact of what if those companies go under? Well, those discs ain't going to work for you anyway. So for me nowadays, it's all digital. Even movies, you guys talked about movies. I don't own a physical movie. I had some movies. I had like the Lord of the Rings Blu-ray set, some Star Wars Blu-rays and stuff like that. But the movies I really enjoy. But other than that, it's all digital anymore. I got digital collection online of movies that I like and enjoy, and I just buy those. And even if those companies go under, those will last long enough that by the time they do go under, I really won't care by that point. I'll either be old and gray or dead. So, these companies are kind of here to stay. And, some companies, especially in the movie, and I would assume the game front too, in some point, but in the movie front, there have been some, and if it works out this way, there have been some digital movie companies that have gone under, and some other digital movie platform has purchased those and then brought them into their company. I can't remember who it was, but Vudu is Vudu is a company source that they're still around, right? But there was another company that was going under, and Vudu purchased them and brought them into their Vudu library. So if you were a participant of the company that went under, now you're in Vudu, which now you have all your. I think it was Ultraviolet. Ultraviolet was the one that went away. Ultraviolet went away.
Yeah. Walmart bought them out, put them on, because Walmart owns Vudu.
On the Vudu. Right. And that's one company, like I said, I buy a lot of my digital movie purchases through Vudu, which is owned by Walmart. So Walmart ain't going anywhere anytime soon. So more likely Vudu is not either, right? But and it's a pretty good digital source too.
Yeah, they were allowing you back in the day to take all your DVDs in and pay basically like $1, and they would put them onto your collection. with the purchase, or at least the physical copy in your hand. And so that was actually a great thing. I never did that. I just sold them all because hell, half the time anyway, most of the greatest movies I have are on some streaming service. So, or the greatest movies that I love are on a streaming service. So, with the advent of HBO Max now, especially with that library, I mean, it has some great movies. I don't want to get into that too much. It's not what we're here for, but
Right.
man, you talk about some samurai movies on that one.
All right. Well, it's kind of funny though, and games really didn't go too much this route, but movies kind of went in a weird little arc from because used to be you would buy a physical copy and you would get the digital copy too. You remember how movies used to do that? You would just go into Vudu, put in your code, and you could get the physical and the digital movie. You'd have both copies in both systems. Video games never did that route, really. The closest thing we ever got to that was games with Steam keys for PC or something. But I haven't bought a PC game in I don't know how long. Because I've had Steam, and we talked about not too long ago the Origins and all the other different platforms that you can that you can get PC games on. But I remember going into GameStop and seeing the slowly shrinking PC game section that went from like a huge wall down to like a single kiosk that had 4 sides on it that you could browse through the PC games. But Nick had said something that kind of is kind of what flipped the switch in my brain anyway for physical versus digital. When games started coming out broken, when you started getting a brand new game that was broken out of the box and you had a day 0 patch, basically as soon as you put the game in, it has to go out to the internet and download a 5 or 10 gig patch or forbid a patch that's bigger than the game on disk itself, which is pretty much every game that comes out nowadays. It basically kind of cemented into my brain that there's no difference now in physical and virtual media, because if the company that put out that physical media went out of business, you're not going to be able to play it anyway because the game that's on the disc is unplayable. So all you really get with the disc now is the cool wall art. You got this whole bookshelf full of your games that are, basically it's just the cover art now that's what you're getting. Beforehand, back in the day, we used to get carts, and all the carts had the full game on it. There was no such thing as going on the internet and downloading a patch for Super Mario Brothers on a cartridge, and all this other stuff. So, or even like on the GameCube with the mini discs for the GameCubes. There's no such thing as downloading patches for that type of stuff. So that was kind of the turning point for me when I started trusting digital more, was that I can't help it. If this company goes under that's providing me with the disc or that's providing me with the digital service, the people that aren't going to be able to get the game anyway, because those people with the disc don't have the actual game on the disc. They have the placeholder for the game, the 7 gig file or whatever, when the game itself is 100 gigs or 200 gigs or something like that. Because it's quite frankly the norm now to get a game that's 50 gigs or more, up to 90. I mean, that's pretty typical. So that was kind of the turning point for me when I was like, well, I can trust the digital games now, because if I can't play it, the people who bought the physical copy aren't going to get to play it either.
Golly, yeah, I'm trying to think about the last computer game I purchased. It had to be either Old Republic or WoW. I mean, it's got to be one of those, or the last digital. I mean, everything else has been digital since then. I mean, we look at our library. I just clicked over real quick and looked at my digital library on Steam, and there's like Counter-Strike, the original Counter-Strike on there. I mean, I don't even think I own a physical copy ever owned a physical copy of that. So, I mean, that just tells you how long that is. That's fantastic. I agree. I think Nick is right in that sense of like, we would buy a game and we would have a 500 plus meg download to go along to patch whatever they shipped out to all of us. And so, but the GameShare did it for me and Pat as well. I mean, GameShare came out on the 360, I think it was originally, and we'd shared games as soon as that came out. We shared every game. I mean, I think we've been sharing games for going on 5 years now, minimum. So why are we as consumers going to continue to buy, games instead of just switching off? I mean, that just makes more sense. And it's a great function, great way that Microsoft and Xbox has, I think, increased their gamer groups. I mean, they are now competing very wholeheartedly with PlayStation.
Right. I think the benefit the benefit of a physical disc is, Nick mentioned it, and it's happened plenty of times, is you don't have the lending library anymore. You can't borrow your friend's game, because there's been plenty of PlayStation games where I'm like, I don't know. Nick's like, hey, you should try this, and I'll try it, and I'll be like, this is an awesome game. I mean, I was trying to remember. I remember what I borrowed your Ghost of Tsushima, didn't I, Nick? Was that the game I borrowed from you? And I ended up, when we all wanted to play again, I ended up buying the game because I was like, well, I want to play it with you guys for the multiplayer. But it was one of those where lending actually paid off. And I bought a few games. I bought a Final Fantasy VII Remake, and some other stuff like that. Nick, the lending library will no longer be around because of digital games.
Yeah, and that's one of the sad things about it, too. I wish Microsoft and PlayStation would kind of extend that, because, yeah, it's going to get to the point where you can't, I said this back on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One time period, and I said it to Shane, and Shane was like, nah. And I said, there's going to come a day, whether it be PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, or maybe the next iteration of their consoles, where it's going to be digital only. There is not going to be no disc drive. It's going to be completely digital, and that's it. I was like, because that's how the market went. Look at the music market. The music market went the same way. And now finding a CD in the stores is almost, unless you go into a used CD store, if you go into a Best Buy or a Walmart or anything like that, not necessarily Walmart. Walmart does have them, but, Walmart used to have like sections of CDs. They have like a wall now, right? Best Buy doesn't even have any. They might have some vinyls because vinyl's kind of like the thing right now, right? But other than that, they used to have like rows and rows of CDs. Now they might have like a little side shelf of CDs. And the same thing with Walmart, and the same thing with Kmart and Target and all those places. Kmart's not around anymore. They are online, but not in stores. But anyway, the point is that kind of went the way of the digital, right? the physical CD market went away and digital came in. We have things like Spotify and these other music, Google Music and things like that you can get what music you want, or even YouTube, right? You can get what music you want without having to go buy the CD, without having to go purchase the CD in stores or burn them even. You can just straight play them from your phone to your car. We used to have back in the day with the CDs, we used to have the 5-disc CD changer in our trunks. All that went away, with digital. So, and it's going to be the same thing with games. Games, it costs less for a company not to have to think about production of those discs, right? They have to pay a company to produce those discs and the covers and the boxes and everything like that goes into the copies and ship them out to stores. And stores have to have shelf space for that. So if those companies can get rid of that overhead, which they will, and say it all comes from our digital storefront, that's just what they're going to do. And it wasn't this generation with gaming, but you look at the PlayStation 5, right? They have two different versions. They have the same PlayStation, but one's a digital and one's a physical. And that's just Sony showing you, and the same way with Microsoft. That's just them showing you that CD-based game is going to go away. So the next iteration of the Xbox and the next iteration of the PlayStation, I would not be surprised if they're completely 100% digital.
It goes along with the speeds of internet and stuff like that have done that. There is one thing, I'll just say one thing. There's one thing that I don't think us as a group, as a gamer group, will ever be able to do digital, and that's board gaming. I think that will always have to be a textile feel of a thing. I have bought Gloomhaven, I bought Wingspan, and I enjoy just kicking back and doing that, but I still don't nearly enjoy that half as much as in person and having that game and having the smell as you unwrap it all and everything like that. So that's one thing I don't think will ever go away for sure.
Right. Well, plus they can't figure out how to make a multiplayer board game online. It's all single player for some reason.
Right.
One of the things that Nick, that you brought in, I'm pretty sure that Microsoft and developers are rooting for the all digital consoles, because you know what that does? That kills the resale market, the used market, which they make no money on. The developer sells a copy of whatever, Nier, brand new, and then GameStop or whoever your retailer is or reseller is buys it back from you for a fraction of what you paid for it, and then resells it to somebody else and buys it back and resells it. They resell the same copy who knows how many times. The game developers aren't making money on that. GameStop is. That's how GameStop is staying in business, by buying and reselling used equipment and stuff. So I think they're ready for something like that to happen, because it would put more money into developers' hands, because there wouldn't be any more of this lending library, as we've said before. If you want to play it, you got to go over to your friend's house and physically play it on their machine, or you need to go and buy your own copy. So I think the game developers, and even like Sony and Microsoft, they're ready for that industry, so that they can get rid of this used market. Because it doesn't make any money for the developers when a game gets bought and resold, in the used market. If it dies, it won't be too bad for me. The only thing that will never die off is I don't know, maybe they might, but like Switch, who still does cart games on cartridges and stuff. That'll be sad when that stuff goes away, because as Nick said, he's a big collector. He's more of a collector than we all are. I mean, he has Nintendo games and all kinds of physical hard copies of stuff. So digital it's the wave of the future, and I have concerns. I have concerns of what happens if the company I bought all my games through goes under. What happens to my collection? We haven't had a precedence of that yet. I mean, can anybody imagine what would happen if Steam went under? I mean, I would be so mad. I don't know what I would do about my library and my thousands of dollars worth of games.
I can never foresee that happening. I mean, these companies have proven business models within that, and so I mean that's just the way that those games will always go. But to the vinyl portion of what Nick was saying, it's kind of like the cyclical thing. Now vinyls are kind of back and stuff like that. He's got Nintendo games. He's got GameCube games. He's probably got some Genesis games somewhere, some Sega games somewhere, like those will, I mean, when the apocalypse happens, Nick is going to be able to trade those in for food for like 6 months. So like really he is doing the best of all of us in storing those things.
Yeah, see, on the end of the apocalypse,
he's the dealer,
just waiting for the apocalypse. Prepare.
He's going to be the
apocalypse. Prepare.
He's going to be the Outlander Earth trophy person or whatever it was from Outlanders, and we're going to be able to trade in there for something that we can actually use in the future.
Yeah, you're going to be like the old lady. I give you 500 of these Outlander credits for that pen you got there. Except for his is going to be like, I'll give you 500 credits for that Nintendo Ninja Turtles game you got there.
That's right.
Excite Bike.
Right, Excite Bike.
I will be the king of the apocalypse.
He'll be the gamer. He'll be the hookup for all the gamers out there. He'll be like, want some Mario? You want some Ninja Turtles? What you want? You want some Smash Brothers? I got you. But yeah, I mean, my fears of digital have basically been wiped clear because of, like I said earlier, the day one, day zero patch. Games come out, they have a huge patch, they're unplayable without it. I mean, we had the big fiasco with Cyberpunk. The game was completely unplayable without the day zero patch. Even when you bought the physical copies, you had to download the huge ass patch before you could play it. There's pros and cons to everything, just like there isn't everything in Nick's life. Because that's what we've had this discussion a few times in the past. Like, how do you think the future of collectors is going to look for current gen systems? I mean, the games will be rarer, right? I mean, especially some of the ones that were less popular, the physical copies will be much more rare, but they're not really playable. If, the studio or whoever's hosting the game, you can no longer download the game from, they shut down the access to it. So what do you think the future is going to look like for that type of collector? You're just going to have a box with cover art at that point, right? I guess that's all you get. You don't have anything that you can actually play or do anything with. Because right now, you have your cartridge games. You could buy a cart emulator or a cart machine of any type that's designed to play or render the cartridges that you got and put them into there. Or you can go buy yourself an old Sega, an old Nintendo, an old whatever you wanted to get and play those games. I think it's going to be a weird market in 20 years from now when people are out there trying to collect the 360 games and the PS2 games and the or the PS4 and PS5 and the Series X and the One X and stuff like that. Those games from that era are going to be kind of weird to see collectors. Can you imagine us being in our 70s and going, look at that, we got it, and you go to the old retro game con and it's just cases of games that you can't play just so you can get the cover art.
I think it'll mainly be like, because they've been selling a lot of games recently, and this has gone for a couple years, so it's not really super recent, but those games that have been coming out, they have the collector's edition that don't include the game, they're just the big box sets that maybe include a statue and soundtracks and maybe some art book or something like that, or still books and stuff like that don't include the game at all. And a lot of them have been doing that recently, and I think it's because of that fact of that they don't have the physical game because you're not actually getting the physical. So I think in the future you're going to look at more of those. It may shift to more of those for 360, or not really necessarily 360, but Xbox One or maybe Series X and PlayStation 5. You're looking for more of those. Collectors are maybe looking for more of those completed box sets that don't include the game actually, or even a download code for the game, but they just include all the stuff that came with it, right? Near Replicant came with one of those. They had one. They didn't have the game. It had like the soundtrack and a big, like, I think an art book and like the script and stuff like that it came with. And, and there's been a lot of games that have done that recently. Which I always thought was weird because I'm like, well, why don't you want to buy this for the game? But maybe not. Maybe you do want just the statue and the stuff that came with it, not necessarily the game. But I think that's where the collection's going to probably tend to in the future for future, Xbox One and PlayStation or Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 games. And those that just go straight into the digital. You're still going to have. What you're going to have is. You're going to have those digital only features, but you're going to have companies that are going to bring out those box sets. When they say, okay, hey, we, even though the game's digital only, we have this box set that has this, 5-inch figurine or whatever, and it comes with an art book and stuff like that you could buy that accompanies the game, even though it doesn't come with the game itself. So I think that's what you're going to see a lot more in the future of is just those accompanying box sets that come with the release of the game.
I don't know that that's what our future necessarily. I mean, that will be some of it, but I think the other portion too, since the Xbox One, I think what's going to happen is that those games in the future will come out on a mobile device or something like that, like as a recreation or something like that, and that's kind of how those things will be reinvented or rehashed or whatever. I mean, if somebody still has their old Xbox One, if somebody still has their old Microsoft legacy library, which I'm thinking that's basically what Microsoft is doing. It's going to be a legacy library or something like that. And that's how you'll always be able to keep those games. I think, we're not
like
talking
a cryptocurrency.
Yeah. Like something like that. Like it's going to be more of like that. Like, maybe they open it up to where you can sell old games. I doubt it, but I mean, unless of course the technology comes to where we can start pulling our games from our Xbox Ones or from our library, download it. Because if we think about it, I mean, I know my library, even with sharing with Patrick, even sharing with Patrick, our library probably pales in comparison to your library. So if our library would take, somewhere around 100 to say, I don't know. I mean, like what's higher than a gigabyte is zigabyte. I mean, like if me and Patrick have that much, like we have like thousands upon thousands of gigabytes of games, you could probably have 3 times that. So like, where's that storage going to go if we ever had that, if we ever needed that? So it's just an interesting thought. I bet you 10 to 1, like those games will start coming on mobile like 15 years from now or something like that. Whereas the 360, I think the physical copies, I think 360 Xbox One versions like the PlayStation 3, maybe a little bit into the 4, I think we're going to see those copies and those things get rare and rare, but who's going to want to buy, PBA bowling 2000 or 19, 2018, 2019 here in 40 years for like $100. I can't see anybody doing that when it's not like, for me, I guess maybe I don't understand it because it's not my generation, but it's not like ET or Asteroids or something like that. Like if I saw one of those or if I had one of those, maybe I would pay a rare game price for it if I was a collector like yourself, Nick. But
well, that's funny. You just mentioned what's been proclaimed the worst game ever made.
ET was the worst game ever made.
But you just, you basically just said another, not the worst game, but a bad game, bowling. So, I mean, it could be a cult classic. I mean, and I, I don't necessarily agree with Nick neither on that, because I think people as collectors want the physical thing because they want to see their collection. I envy those guys that I've seen have a man cave or gamer room set up where it's just a giant wall of like Kallax shelves with like, here's my 64 and this one, here's my Sega and this one, and here's my games around it. That's what a collector is. The collector is not just, I mean, the scene is changing, yes. I mean, we have people that are collecting what they keep calling those the NFTs now. They're selling the digital art NFTs, and I'm just like, I don't get it. It's, I'm starting to sound like the old man about I don't need newfangled devices, but I think as a collector, you want that physical collection in your hand of the game to basically put it on your wall. So you could be like, here's my Nintendo 64 and here's my wall of Nintendo 64 games or PlayStation games or all this. Digital will never fulfill that because you can, I have friends, Nick and I have a mutual friend who has a Steam library that would probably dwarf the two of ours. Even combined, but he's also, but he's not what I would consider a collector. I consider Nick a collector, and I wouldn't think you would feel the same way about your collection if you had the entire Nintendo series digital versus if you had these carts and a Nintendo, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't, I like digital for certain things, but yeah, as a collector, I want the physical thing there. But also to your point too, like, you talked about, and I'm sure it's probably true for certain collectors where they just want the box, right? But most collectors want the box with a CD or cartridge that they can pop in and play without having to do anything else, right? That they can just pop in and it plays without having some sort of download. And I think the download portion is where some collectors would say, no, I'm out on that, right? I don't want just the box. I want the disc inside to be complete as well, because collectors are all about completion, right? They're big completionists. I mean, when you think of collectors, they don't want just, because you think about back in the GameCube days, or even the Nintendo days, it wasn't just the instruction booklet. It also had the maintenance booklet, right? Remember the old maintenance panel? They want that too. They want all the instruction booklet, the maintenance sleeve that went in there, like the registration sleeves that go in there and all that crap. That's what a completionist wants. They want all the everything. So they, besides just the booklets, they also want the disc to be able to pop into a whatever it is or a cartridge and be able to play that game. And if we get to the point where it'll be odd, it'll be weird to see, right, what they do, what most completionists do or collectors do when it comes to that, where, what do they do about games that aren't 100% complete on disc, right, where they have to download? Is that something that those individuals are, for me, I'm not really interested in that. But for some collectors, are they interested in that? Are they interested in just having that, like you said, or are they not? That's really a very interesting question to put out there.
Right. And if you're an avid collector, in listening to this, what do you think about the future of game collecting? The preservation of gaming, at another sense of it. Because that's a question that I've got. Because I'm not a huge collector, but the things that I do want, I want physical copies of. Like, I would love to have a Dreamcast and a wall of Dreamcast games. But my current thought process is I'm not like, I want a 360 and I want a wall of 360 games. That's not on my thought process right now. as a collector, I'm just like, yeah, I get all that digital, but I'm not a collector. I'm not an avid collector. Like I said, of video games. I collect other things, but not video games. I don't know. I've had tons of video games over the years, and I would not have been able to keep up with where to put them, and I trade them in. That's kind of another lead point into physical versus digital as well. Physical games go cheaper quicker because of the used market. That brand new game that's $60 that came out today, maybe in 2 months, 3 months, you might be able to go down to GameStop and get it for $40, or even, because right now GameStop does I think it's $5 cheaper than a used copy of a game that gets turned back in a week or a month is $5 cheaper than the full version. And I'm usually like, screw that, I'll just buy brand new the most time when that happens. But physical media tends to be cheaper quicker because after 30 days of it sitting on the shelf and being used GameStop goes down to $40, whereas digitally that game is still $60 and will only go on sale at very select times. Physical doesn't really go on sale that often, brand new, but used it's often cheaper than new games. So that's kind of a pro for physical versus digital. You can usually get it cheaper. But yeah, I mean, I'm still going to be an avid digital because there's no reason not to for me right now. Plus, I don't want to have the shelf space. I remember back in the day having bookcases of Xbox 360 games and PlayStation games, just shelves of books of games. And you know what I did with them? I took them when I traded in my console for the next gen, and I put it towards the cost of the next gen console. So I don't have them anymore.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, shelf space is definitely a thing. I am totally out of shelf space. I'm not running out. I am out. So, I slide them in the shelves as well as I can, but they're all just kind of like stuffed in there now because I don't have any more space left. But yeah, I'm all digital as well with the newer stuff. Older stuff I want physical copies of. But the newer stuff, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and probably generations beyond that, I'm going to just want physical only, and that's the route I'm going to go with it. Anything older than that, I want to have a digital or a physical copy of, but just the newer stuff, I find like we've kind of been talking about, it's just going to go all digital, and I won't really have a need to collect, Halo Infinite 55 or whatever version it is at that time as a physical version, because all this is going to be a case with a download code inside of it, right? I mean, and you can buy cases online for like 100 cases for $1.50. So if I want to do that and print out a label, I could just stick it together and there you go. I have a Halo Infinite 55 case. So it's not really going to be worth it to me at that point. But yeah, so right now I'm all digital. Like I said, retro stuff. I still visit the retro stores and buy old PlayStation and Xbox games and GameCube and whatnot. But anything from now on, it's going to be all digital. I bought physical for my PS4, but PS5, once we eventually get one, I'm hoping for getting the discless or digital version of that, because I'm pretty much going to go all digital with my PS5.
Yep, same on that one. Well, cool. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like, we're all about digital, and I kind of want to look, I kind of am curious to look back, 20 years from now and see how things are going. I kind of want to see what the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and Xbox Series X people are doing, or the collectors are doing. Are they going back and trying to find these physical copies of stuff, even though they can't just pop them in and play them? And I'd also like to see what happens to games that came out and you could buy digitally. So, I put my Xbox One X on the shelf 20 years from now, and if it'll still play, can I download that game I purchased digitally or not? That would be interesting to see. I'm not holding my breath for that, but it would be kind of cool if I could access my library from 20 years from now, because I kind of wonder what's going to happen. I know Microsoft's big into the backwards compatibility, but for how long? Like, how long am I going to be able to play that game I bought on 360 on my One X, my Xbox 3000 or whatever that comes out in 10, 15 years from now? Am I still going to be able to play those or not? So cool. Anybody else got any pros or cons they want to bring up on this one, and on what your preferences are and why you lean the way you do?
No, good stuff. You know, glad for the digital age, as I'm not a hoarder, so pretty happy about that.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate everybody listening to this episode. If you liked what we were talking about, or maybe there's some pros or cons that we didn't necessarily mention that you want to bring up, go ahead and leave some comments down there for us. So we can interact with everybody on their questions, or maybe the things that they thought were way bigger deals than we did, or maybe weren't as big a deal as we did. I think now it's time that we got to go grab the vacuum cleaner and try to get that space ice cream because it's floating away in zero gravity. So we hope to catch you guys in the next episode.
See ya.